Did Ireland side with Adolf Hitler because we hated the English? Well, Dr. Focus Fulcher. Hi, hello, and welcome. This is John O'Sullivan from the Irish Pagan School. And today is a history lesson, particularly for one individual who goes by the username handle Hughes Cullen 2179, who's of the opinion, according to their comments in our YouTube circumstance, that when Adolf Hitler raised to power, you just stood on his side because you hated the English, I suppose. So that's the verbatim comments that we get from someone who obviously needs an education in Irish history. And so, that's what we do here at the Irish Pagan School. We are a school. We're an education body who teach people about Irish history, culture, ethnicity, spirituality, and a whole lot more. So, yeah, buckle up, settle down. I have my coffee on board and let's dive into this. So, neat answer, not hard to say. No, Ireland didn't support Adolf Hitler during World War II because we hated the English. Absolutely fucking not. And we have a number of very clear facts that are easily identifiable in all of 5 minutes of quick internet browser search. But let me break it down for you and make it nice and easy. And maybe give a little bit of cultural context, because that's part of this process as well. So, I suppose we've got to go right the way back to 1169, when the Anglo-Normans invaded Ireland. They were brought over by the King of Leinster, a guy called Dermot MacMurchada, because he was ousted from his position as King of Leinster, and he decided to go outside and to bring forces in to support his failed rule. And the person he brought in was none other than a guy called Richard de Clare, also known as Strongbow. And Strongbow was married to Dermot MacMurchada's daughter, Aoife, therefore giving him a right to land and rule and inheritance in Ireland. So that's what we consider the very beginnings, 1169, of occupancy, Anglo-Norman occupancy in Ireland. And it goes a heck of a long time from there. When Irish people talk about the 800 years, that's when we start the count, in essence. Because what followed there was the deeper Anglo-Norman invasion. It went bigger, it went further. They completely destabilized the Irish culture at that point. And then when the United Kingdom was taken over and dominated and they became their monarchists, they just kept taking chunks out of Ireland. They kept taking more and more and dominating. We then get to the Cromwellian era and what was known as the plantations, where people were unsettled from places in England and the UK or the mainland island, and they were just given land over in Ireland. We'll just, oh, there you go over there. That's your land now over there. What about the people on it? Doesn't matter to them. Get rid of them, push them off, move them somewhere else. That's where we get the term to hell or to connacht, where Irish people were forced off their lands into what was the less arable areas of our island to try and survive. It wasn't just a dispossession, it was an eradication of Irish culture. The whole intentional debasement of Irish identity down to subhuman, the Irish language. The reason I am not speaking Irish to you now is because my language was outlawed. Absolutely. All of our culture, all of our mythology, all of our stories were denied us, and we were crippled and broken and destroyed by an oppressive force who dominated us. This rolls the clock forward to, let's say, 1840s. And in the 1840s, we have something known as An Gortam Mór, the Great Hunger, also known as the Potato Famine, which wasn't a potato famine. Yes, there was a potato blight. Potatoes, not native to Ireland. Absolutely not. They were introduced as a superfood because they would grow anywhere in very poor soil, and Irish people could sustain themselves on the superfood while all of the actual abundant growth of crops and were harvested from Ireland and taken out to fill the pockets of absentee landlords in the UK. And so it wasn't just there was a blight and people died. Yeah, no, millions of people died. We still haven't recovered our population at all from the point of where it was. And those who didn't die emigrated, fled all over the world. And so it wasn't, it was a terrible tragedy by accident. No, there was intentional British policies that denied aid, that made sure that armed guards were paid to remove the abundant growth of crops in the island so that the people would die and starve in grass. Like, sorry, I'm a little bit amped up about this because, yeah, this is real. And so, generations of Irish people died with grass stains on their lips because that was the only thing they could try and find to eat. And so it's not ancient history. It's not like so far away from us. But we got to move on because we're supposed to be talking about Adolf Hitler, and he's not in 1840s. He's 100 years later once we get to the 1940s. But before we get to his time in the 1930s, 1940s, we need to make a quick stop at 1916. So in 1916, after a lot of like Republican activity and dissatisfaction with the British rule, again, post-genocide famine of 1840s, we had our first attempted uprising, the Easter Rising in 1916, where some individuals got together, the Irish Republican Brotherhood, the Irish Republican Army at that particular point, and staged their rebellion. And so they took over key locations around the island, particularly in Dublin, and they declared an Irish Republic. They declared themselves independent. What they got for that was a British naval ship driving all the way up or sailing all the way up the Liffey and bombarding the shit out of Dublin City. What followed then was horrific oppression and abuses and like unbelievable harm and damage done to Ireland in post 1916. But we're still unoppressed. We're still under the dominion of the UK, and we're still far away from the 1930s, 1940s for the World War II and Adolf Hitler. The next stop in Irish history is the period of 1919 to 1921. And at this point, we have the beginnings of our further Irish independence. There's been an elected option. A number of Irish representatives from Sinn Féin, a political party, were elected to the government in Westminster. They chose not to sit in Westminster. They chose to instead form a government in Ireland, and they called it Dáil Éireann. So this was the first sitting in absentee. So the Westminster over in England, the politicians elected in Ireland decided, no, we're going to stay in Ireland. We're going to deal with what Irish people need. So the 1920s, difficult time, of course, all around the world for a number of different reasons, but in specifically sticking within the wheelhouse of Irish history, not telling anyone else their history. We had our Anglo-Irish War for independence. So we still carried on the struggle for independence from 1919 through to 1920-21, and it was guerrilla warfare. It was military tactics. It was destabilizing the circumstances of oppression that had been placed upon us for such a long period of time. And it was the actions of people like Michael Collins and Eamon de Valera and the Irish Republican Army and a number of other individuals. So that was the Anglo-Irish War for independence. Eventually, we were given an option, a stepping stone to independence, as Michael Collins himself referred to it as. And this was in December 6, 1922, with the Irish Free State. So at this point, the British government had kind of had enough. They were really put right up against it with whatever else they were doing, dominating and conquering all over the world. We won a free state. It was still under the auspices of British dominion, but it was our right to rule ourselves, and it was referred to in Ireland as home rule. It meant that Dáil Éireann would be a recognised body, that we would have the right to set laws and to govern for ourselves. And it was a huge deal. It was a huge, big deal. It was such a great piece of progress to be made, to have even some form of autonomy. But of course, it wasn't enough for some, because for many, it was a free Ireland or nothing. And so what happened from here in 1922 is the Irish Civil War. So we fought against ourselves. What had been a united body fighting against the UK in order to secure independence for Ireland, some people said a free state is a stepping stone. Michael Collins himself, he joined the free state side of it, and he was like, yep, we can go further from here. This is recognition. We can lay down arms, we can stop the military aspect of this, and we can push Ireland to a republic from here. people like Eamon de Valera and such decided, no, it's full republic or nothing, full independence or nothing. And so, yeah, at this point, Britain did what Britain has always done, which is, oh, we're just going to supply weapons. So they funded the Free State with a whole lot of weapons and facilitated our harm of ourselves. And so, yeah, for the period of 1922 to 1923, we have the Irish Civil War. And it wasn't pretty, and it was bloody, and it was difficult. But we were a free state. We had the right to rule. We began to make our own choices. We began to make legislation for ourselves. And yes, it still had to be signed off by Westminster, by Britain. But it was making the steps along the way that we needed to get there. And so in 1937, December 29th, 1937, I actually have it here, the Constitution, Bunreacht na hÉireann, was developed and signed and brought into effect. So at this particular time, we had a lot of other agreements, there was a lot of back and forth, and it was in the ending of the Civil War, actually, the 1923, the end of the Civil War is where we had the partitioning of Ireland. That's what created Northern Ireland. And that's why there are 6 counties still in the north of, known as Northern Ireland, that are part of the UK, despite them being on the island of Ireland. Now, 1937, as I said, that's, do the maths, 14 years? 14 years from the end of a civil war, we finally have Bunreacht na hÉireann, the Constitution of Ireland, the elected, democratically declared Republic of Ireland, where we were no longer under the rule of Britain. We were no longer subject to their demands. I was about to say warmongering, but yeah, we were free. We were independent at that particular point. And that's 1937. You know what happened in 1939? Germany invaded Poland, kicking off World War II in Europe. The Republic of Ireland was 2 years old. As an independent country, getting back on its feet, trying to figure itself out, trying to do what it can for its people, trying to legislate in this very big world of very other dominant powers, multiple dominant powers. What does World War II look like to us? Well, Adolf Hitler, yeah, okay, the history on that's very clear. He raised himself up on a platform of National Socialism, which allowed him to radicalize most of the population of his country. The reason why he was able to do that was because of the oppressive kind of restrictions placed upon Germany post-World War I. Because World War I happened, yes, absolutely, and when Germany lost World War I, they were sanctioned heavily so that there wouldn't be another rise. But that set up the destabilized, divisive nature of oppression, which led to Hitler coming to power. It's clear. It's in the history books. It's easily seen. And why was there such a difficulty between Germany and England in World War I? Well, I don't know. It's because they're related. Yeah, there's a reason why the British monarchy family changed their name to Windsor. But again, that's other people's history, and I'm sure that's easily found and easily looked up. So Adolf Hitler kicks off his invasion of Poland in 1939. The Irish country, the Republic of Ireland, is 2 years old. So what do we do at that time? Do we side with Hitler? No. Do we side with our oppressors and abusers after 800 years of torment and ridicule and harm and stripping of the abundant wealth of our island? No. Do we side with anyone? No. We side with ourselves. We declare for ourselves. We declare we're not going to get involved in everyone else's imperialistic bullshit. Because that's what it seemed like to us. That's what's clear from all of the histories at the time. That's all of the statements. The first president of Ireland, a guy called Douglas Hyde, he stated as much in many of his quotes and his speeches. We need to look to the Irish people for Ireland. And so, yeah, we're not going to get involved. Eamon de Valera was our Taoiseach, our Prime Minister at that time. And they put in an emergency rule in Parliament to allow them to militarise Ireland, but for Ireland's defence against everybody. Because what it looked like to this beginning new country is that, oh shit, the people who've abused us for 800 years are now in a scrap with somebody else. What are they going to do? They're probably going to just dominate us all over again, to take more of our resources, to strip our people. So we declared neutrality. We said, no, everyone else can have their fights. Go and have your fucking fights. We're out. Now, our neutrality wasn't based on any particular preference any which way. It was the preference to look to our own and to care for our people. Because, again, what the fuck could we offer? But you know what we did offer? 50,000 soldiers volunteered. 50,000 Irish people volunteered to go and join the British Army to fight. Weren't compelled, weren't conscripted. They chose. And they had the right to choose because we were an independent country. We were a republic. So did we stand idly by? Did the people of Ireland stand idly by? No, we fucking didn't. 50,000 volunteered to join the British Army, an army whose previous history had been bloody and horrific in Ireland. But we saw that there was a greater danger, and some people chose to go there to support and to fight. 50,000. Interestingly, there's another group, about 5,000 of defence forces, Irish defence forces, deserted their posts to go and fight as well. Those who survived from that 5,000, like deserters, Irish soldiers, those who survived and came back were stripped of rank, were treated as treasonous, didn't get their pensions. It was only 2013 that was made right. The government of Ireland apologised to how they had treated those 5,000 people. But again, they'd abandoned their posts to go and fight in someone else's war. And Ireland had always been stripped of its resources to facilitate other people's circumstances, to facilitate the imperialistic colonising drive of Great Britain. And yes, the resources were also the people. At this point, you're going to be like, yeah, but like, you know, how could you be neutral when there was atrocities and horror going on? 1939 is when all of this fucking kicked off. It wasn't until 1942 that the Allies admitted they were aware of concentration camps and a Holocaust that was being committed against Jewish people and people who didn't conform to the expectations of Hitler's Germany. The first concentration camp wasn't found until 1944, actually, and that was by Russian soldiers moving in from the opposite side. But way back in 1939, this little country on the edge of the world, only 2 years old, are supposed to make some moral imperative choice on information that we weren't aware of. For us, it was just more colonizing imperialistic bullshit, scrapping over resources and scrapping over power again. Now, does that mean Ireland was innocent and, you know, absolutely played nice and was brilliant? No. We played both sides. Because we were a people, and a people is not a singular unit of expression. It is a spectrum of identity. And so, yeah, you will go into your history of Ireland and you'll find a group known as the Blue Shirts, who were pretty much Nazis in Ireland. You know how far they got? Not very fucking far. They had their protests, they tried to rally, the whole nationalist socialism, you know, which I can understand, but they were absolutely supporting Nazi agenda. And we weren't having it. There were Nazi raids. There were, like, you know, Luftwaffe bombs that landed on Ireland because they missed England. There was attempts to try and invade Ireland as a backdoor into England, and German soldiers were incarcerated. There was an attempt to try and use Ireland to kind of get around somewhere once, you know, into France, and English soldiers were incarcerated. The IRA did send one of their generals to be trained by the German forces, but on the way back, he was sunk. He drowned in a U-boat that was sunk, so we didn't get their information. We did try and trade for guns. Yes, we do know that guns came into Ireland from Germany. because Germany were happy to try and push England into a war on two fronts. Does that mean we're siding with Adolf Hitler and his grind of things? Absolutely fucking not. But the enemy of my enemy, and an ability to try and keep driving for our independence and to protect ourselves. You know what we also did? We gave information to the Allied forces. You know who was monitoring all of the weather off the Atlantic and reporting that? We were. You know whose weather forecast and meteorological studies facilitated the D-Day landings? Ours did. We've always been involved. But it's on our terms and based on our right to choose to be involved. And that's what neutrality gives us. The ability to view these things one step back and say, actually, sorry, no. This isn't for Ireland or our people to bleed for someone else's war. But does that mean we're cowards? Does that mean we don't fight? Well, I have another piece of information for you. And this one, it lands very close to home, because this is my own father's service. The Irish Defence Forces has completed 70,000 individual tours in UN peacekeeping missions, UN approved and missions. I have the quote written down. I'm gonna just read it to you because I am getting a little bit emotional on it. Irish Defence Forces have completed over 70,000 individual tours of duty across more than 70 UN and UN approved worldwide missions. These are the UN Blue Helmet, Blue Body Armor Defence Forces, Peacekeeping Forces. 70,000 individual tours across 70 approved since 1958. So in this post-World War recovering 1958, we straight away were sending forces, sending our people, sending our soldiers, not into anyone else's wars, not into anyone else's imperialistic intent or land grabbing or profiteering, but just to strive for fucking peace. This represents the longest unbroken record of continuous UN peacekeeping service of any nation in the world. Any nation in the world. And my dad is part of that 70,000 individual tours. He did tours in Cyprus, he did tours in Lebanon. Yeah, you know, Lebanon, the part that's currently been attacked by Israel and bombed out of it, the part where Irish UN peacekeeping forces were still holding the line there, still advocating and defending people from harm. And then we were told, oh, well, yeah, you better pull them out of there or they're going to be bombed. Irish soldiers have stood everywhere, fought everywhere. Not for imperialism, not for colonizing, not for wealth, not for some notion of patriotic entitlement, for peace, for care and for protection. I was delighted to see a movie done, Siege at Jadotville. Look it up on Netflix. An Irish unit held their ground. Told they were supposed to abandon it, didn't. Said that they would defend and protect. The longest unbroken record of continuous UN peacekeeping service in the world. So, Hughes Cullen 2179, do you think for a fucking second we're this small, petty people who side with fascists just because we have been traumatically abused by another country? Do you think for a second Ireland is the kind of place who's going to turn a blind eye to genocide happening around the world? You think our country, our culture, our people don't know what it's like to scrape and survive, to claw back from the edges of destruction any fraction, any fragment of our identity, our national identity, cultural identity, our ethnicity? Do you think we're going to just deny other people the same respect for their ethnicity or their identity? I can cite you another source if you like. Daniel O'Connell, one of the greatest parliamentarians of the last 100 years, 200 years in Ireland. He's the guy on O'Connell Street in their capital city that Dublin is named after O'Connell Street, the big statue for that guy. He spent a lot of time on tour around Ireland with a guy called Frederick Douglass, a black man who freed himself from slavery and then spoke all against slavery. And Frederick Douglass came to Ireland hoping to garner support and to raise awareness. And he found like-minded people here. And Daniel O'Connell stood beside Frederick Douglass in front of a whole lot of people in Ireland and said, if you do go to Americas, if you do go anywhere out into the world, and you see a man who looks like him, a black man, he is your brother. His people have been through similar shit to what our people have been through under the oppression of Britain. So, stand with him. And if you allow yourself to, engage in slavery, if you choose to oppress people like him for your own wealth, you're no longer Irish. Not my words, Daniel O'Connell's words. As I said, this was a rant. I got my coffee in beforehand, but it really fucking hurts when people feel entitled to just come in and drop fragmentary pieces of hate based on ignorance. Like, for fuck's sake, 5 minutes in a search engine. Oh, why is Ireland a neutral country? Did Ireland fight for Adolf Hitler? There are easy fucking ways to find that information. But what Hughes Cullen has done, or Hughes Cullen is what the username is. What they have done is take one fragmentary piece of misunderstood information and then radicalize their entire circumstance and their intention from that. And that's what we fight here at the Irish Pagan School. It's the idea that, the IRA absolutely sent people to try and, learn from and try and get weapons from the Germans. Yeah. But at the same time, we were incarcerating German soldiers and British soldiers and trying to keep our people safe in our Virgin Republic, which was only 2 years old. Everything is about context. Everything is about cultural context and expanded context. And all it takes is a modicum, a minuscule amount of curiosity to find out more. It's not fucking hard. But for those who can't, or those who have difficulty, or who don't know where to start, ask me a question. I'll give you an answer. Might make you uncomfortable. It might not be something that you are happy with, but I will actually go in, I will pull out the history, I'll provide the context, and I'm happy to explore and to learn and to grow, because that is what we should do. Not just take small fragments of information and then try and skew history to our own personal well-being. The same has been done with Irish spirituality, Irish native spirituality. Oh yeah, I'm going to take this small piece of information about Lugh and then suddenly refer to him as a sun god. Sorry, you're wrong. There's extra context. There's extra information. There's more content. You just have to read more. You can understand more. But people who come from a place of hate, people who come from a place of closed mind, belligerent disregard, people who abandon curiosity and compassion, I feel sad for you. I actually feel sad for you. Because there is so much to learn, to experience, to grow from, to challenge your own self on, to just, yes, be uncomfortable about some parts of it. Yeah, we had Nazis in Ireland. They were called the blue shirts. You can look that up too. But we're not hiding. It's uncomfortable. But the difficulty of not learning from your history is that you're going to repeat it, as we see all around the world at the moment. And so I will be very loud when it comes to comments like this. Ireland doesn't stand for fascism. We will never stand for imperialism. We will never stand for the denigration, destruction, or death or genocide of other people. In fact, Hitler's eugenics program tried to target Ireland as a, oh, well, they're a Celtic pure race. They're all the white Celtic Irish people, for his whole Aryan bullshit philosophy. So anyone who's goes out of their way to try and espouse, oh yeah, well, you're not Irish if you have more melanin in your skin. I'm sorry, you've again taken the wrong piece of information and latched onto it. You're propagating horror and hate from Hitler. So again, if you don't stand with a black person, you're being racist and you're not Irish, according to Daniel Connell. If you turn around and say that you're not Irish because you have to be red-haired and green-eyed and fair-skinned to be Irish, yeah, you've been sucking down the eugenics Kool-Aid from the fucking that side of the horror show as well. Ireland is an ethnicity. We're a people of a land, yes. But the story of Ireland has always been emigration and immigration. It has. And people have gone out of Ireland to other places in the world and still identified as Irish. They've had children in other places in the world, and their children identify as Irish. Their children's children still hear stories of Granda who came over or great granny who did this, and that's why I'm Irish. We are a culture and an ethnicity that was denied and attempted to be destroyed by our oppressive, colonizing next-door neighbours during the height of their imperialism. But we never sided with fascists. We never sided with the eradication of people just because of their faith or their spirituality or their skin colour. And yes, I'm saying we as the collective, because that's the majority. Not all Irish people are sound. Some people are shitheads and assholes, because you're going to find them everywhere. Fucking Hughes Cullen could be Irish. Although, with a comment like that, I doubt they are. I warned it was going to be a rant. I need to go and finish the rest of my coffee before it gets really cold. But what I would like to say is, thank you for being here for this rant. We are an education institution first. We're an educational body. And it is about Irish culture, history, spirituality, and ethnicity, and folklore, and everything else. You can't avoid one from the other. Understanding and experiencing the Irish mindset of survival, the Irish mindset of cultural expression, the Irish mindset of art or spiritual existence has to include an understanding of our history. Because how else will you really know why it means so much to us? I will leave it there. And we have a whole load of more resources. Check out another video here on YouTube. Check out the podcast where you'll hear more of me talking. We have irishpagan.school where you'll find blogs and regular content. Classes, irishpaganschool.ie, irishpaganschool.com for our archives content, and more all of the time because we're passionate about this. We love this. This is our fucking joy. And as much as, yes, there are shitty fucking comments at times, it gives me an opportunity to say, hi, yeah, dive into the history. Let's learn something about it together. Hopefully you did. And until next time, look after yourself. Take care. It's not.